Yeah, thanks everybody for sticking around at 5 o'clock. I know that we're standing between you and exciting things at 5:30. So I'm going to say as many provocative things as possible, and I think you're
Totally.
going to say a bunch of controversial things about how
Absolutely.
draconian surveys are, and just basically smash the market research industry for a few minutes. So we'll be interesting. Um, so just the agenda today, we just want to talk about a couple of things here. So the talk today that we're both presenting on is really on how to use what we call passive panels in social listening to really arrive at insights. And I'm just going to kind of go through a few kind of basic methodological things like, why is it that social actually is really useful for this? What are the types of insights you can glean from social? What are some of the methodologies that we use to actually create these large panels of passively observed individuals in social media that companies like Visa are now using to not really just address kind of like real-time marketing, but actually kind of address really, big, once in a lifetime maybe strategic questions. So really quickly, on why social media matters. So I know that this, I think consumer insights and market research professionals in particular tend to be skeptical of the utility of social media data. Some of that stems from the fact that social media is not representative, that not everybody is on social, and when you look at social data, you don't really know what the composition of the audience is, right? But I think there's a few things that are actually starting to kind of reduce people's anxieties around that. This slide almost is so old at this point, I'm not even sure if I need to share it anymore, but believe it or not, most people are on social media. I think that's kind of a non-starter. And then I think the other thing that people maybe will sort of argue about is whether or not everybody's represented there. And so the truth of it is that this is from, Pew publishes a ton of reports on basically the adoption of social platforms in the US. You can kind of go to the Pew website anytime you want to see how things are changing. But I think the key thing here is that pretty much every age band, and if you look every sort of like ethnic group and every sort of regional DMA is represented in social media. And although it's true that there's way more people, young people under 25 that are on Instagram than people over 55, the truth of the matter is that there's plenty of people over 55 there. And just like any other type of research platform, as long as you're using the right kind of experimental controls to kind of remove the artifacts of the platform you're using as a research platform, that's the same for mobile devices, same for any other type of research tool, you're going to get pretty good insights, but it's all about having the right experimental control. But the representativeness of social is just sort of one piece of the picture. I would also go further to say that social media data is essential now because if you really want to understand the types of content that any audience is really consuming and being exposed to, you have to look at social. So in Q4 of, I guess Q3 of 2015, there was a tipping point. There's a company called Parsley that helps with web analytics for several hundred of the top US publishers online. And they saw this was the point at which referral traffic to the landing page for the major US news sites flipped from being primarily Google-based search to Facebook. So what this means is that people are no longer sort of actively searching for content like they used to. They're not going to keyword content. I mean, they're not going to news sites through keyword searches first or through subscription or like having the landing page saved or typing in USA Today. They're seeing it passively through their news feeds. And this is really provocative because what it means is that this whole kind of 1990 model that's been kind of like the intellectual, I guess, foundation of how the internet works for the past 10, 15 years is kind of turning upside down. So the 1990 model is really basic. It basically just states that about 1% of people online produce content, about 9% are really active in social networks. They share the content, and most people, about 90%, kind of lurk and learn. And most of the audiences we really care about are these 90% lurk and learners. But in the past, you actually could just focus on the 1% and be like, okay, well, what are the influencers saying? What are these people that produce all the content? What are their attitudes? And how is that being kind of consumed by the 90% that's constantly searching for them? In a world where social media and things like Facebook are the primary source for people's news and information, it's the 9% that matters a lot. It's basically who in your network is really active in sharing. What kind of content do they tend to share and follow? Because that's the best guess we have. Because realistically, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, their algorithms are they're purposefully opaque, right? Like publishers have kind of lost control over exactly how their content's distributed through these networks. So the best guess you're going to have is by looking at the 9%, these panels, and seeing like what kind of content they share, because that's going to basically be the means through which most people are actually seeing news nowadays. So anyway, so that was my provocative statement. So how do we actually make the social data useful? Well, I know that, again, consumer insights and market researchers in particular have slammed the utility of this type of research, right? I don't know if I would call this research. This is kind of NLP keyword-based analytics where you go to a social listening tool, you say, okay, I want to learn everything there is to know about mobile devices, and you get a bunch of NLP-based sentiment, which may or may not be accurate. You're going to get a lot of hashtags, things like that. And it's it can be very useful, for real-time marketing. There are applications for it, but you don't really get these kind of rich strategic insights from it. One of the reasons why is because, I guess here's kind of an example. So this is just kind of based on an analysis we did years ago for Coca-Cola. They wanted to know if Jennifer Aniston was the right spokesperson for Smart Water. And when you kind of do the traditional social listening, you're going to come up with a bunch of junk, basically. If you put in Smart Water into a social listening tool, here's basically what you get. Most of the posts are just jokes. People being like, you're not smart, you need to drink Smart Water before your test, and things like that. Just not really that interesting, and definitely not going to address whether or not people who drink Smart Water are really into healthy living, into yoga, whether or not there's sort of psychographic truths about this audience that would resonate if Jennifer Aniston is a spokesperson. But what you can do, and this is something that is more rare, this is very rarely done, but I think is increasingly being used by companies like Visa, is to create these passive panels of known audiences. So actually go and find people that purchase Smart Water using a DMP or some similar database. Find those people in social networks on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and pull everything that they follow. Like again, 90% of people don't, well, that's kind of a simplistic view, but most people don't talk that much about the brands they use, but they follow them. So you can get really, really rich insights into the news sites they go to, what their hobbies are, what kind of books they read, whether they're into self-help. I mean, all sorts of sort of demographic and psychographic truths are lying out there, but you just have to be really, I think, much more purposeful in how you actually look for them. There's a bunch of ways to create these passive panels, and again, we don't have a lot of time to talk about methodology here, but we're happy to talk afterwards about how these are created. But basically, if you have a good data scientist, you don't even need a social listening platform. You can kind of go and find people that sort of self-describe being a certain group, people that have certain demographics. You can use your own customer data. You can use conversational data to create these passive panels, and Jess is going to talk about 2 of these that were done for Visa. And you basically can throw them into a database like Elasticsearch and just kind of mine the content on an ongoing basis. And it creates this kind of trifecta of really rich data. So you have you basically get conversations that are always relevant because there's no spam. It's the audience you care about, whether it's millennials or parents or IT decision makers or whatever. You can look at the types of behavioral content they're looking at, like what kind of content they consume, not the content they talk about. And also you get all the sort of rich geolocation that I know has been a real kind of focus of a lot of the talks here at this conference this week. And I think when you kind of take all those things together, you get insights that would be incredibly difficult to get through traditional social listening as well as through some of the sort of market research techniques that are usually used through surveys. And this is basically just a quick example we found from Instagram. We were doing some work for a facial cleanser. We discovered, and sorry, I thought this was actually going the other direction, so I'm not giving you nearly enough time.
Oh,
so,
no worries.
Yeah, I'll move on here. But basically what we found is that there's a huge proportion of tweens that spend their time on Instagram basically posting fictitious stories about how miserable they are. And then thousands of people replying like, oh my God, that's such a sad story. I'm so sorry to hear that. And it's this really weird alien kind of catharsis where you have this huge group of people that are engaging in this kind of very interesting psychographic activity that we would have completely missed through other types of means. So social data does kind of get at these really important human truths, again, when you kind of use these passive panels. So on to more B2B examples.
I think they tease you with only 15 minutes and then give you extras.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Visa actually uses a lot of the methods that Seth talked about. We actually work with W2O Group pretty regularly and did these 2 studies with W2O Group. But again, as Seth mentioned, we brought a lot of this in-house. We have data scientists at Visa that now work on this, and we kind of built the passive panels internally so that we can use them all the time. The first one, making it happen. Visa traditionally has a really poor relationship with small to medium business owners. They kind of hate us because they think we take all their money, and we were doing a very bad job of marketing to them and speaking to them and really building a relationship that we wanted to. So we set out to understand topics that matter to most of the small business owners to help inform our marketing strategy. And we really wanted to understand their pain and passion points and really kind of understand their current perception of Visa, perception of competitors, and understand how maybe we could help them in a more profound way than we had traditionally. And we didn't want to spend the kind of money that our big market research firms were asking us to. We didn't want to take the time to do massive focus groups and surveys. So we took this different approach with W2O, and we actually found it to be really, really meaningful. So people don't say, in their Twitter feeds or on forums, I'm a small business owner. That's just not the way people talk. So we had to take a different approach in how we were going to find these people. So what we did was we found people who mentioned in their profiles, whether it was a Twitter profile, Facebook forum, they mentioned the words I own or I run or I manage, one of those kind of terms that then the next word would be a business. And then we did some extra work to kind of eliminate big CEO type companies. We did a lot of cross-sectional checking on LinkedIn just to make sure that, Visa's a big business. We don't want to build a marketing strategy on incorrect data. So we took this extra step, but we actually didn't need to. We basically took all of the content from these people that we found who were small to medium business owners and dumped them into a searchable database. And then we just started to analyze the data in this database. What were the key themes that people were talking about? What types of content were they most drawn to? And who influences these folks? Like any good research study, we were able to index our audience against the broader internet population. So we knew if we were over-indexing or under-indexing in certain populations. We weren't. We were pretty, aligned to what was out there in the world. You can see we were under-indexing a little bit in females. We actually stacked our small to medium business owners in the panel against what census data or whatever the data out there is that tells us to, and it actually lines up perfectly. Most people out there in the world who are small to medium business owners own a food and beverage business. So it really told us that this was going to work. This is a lot of words on a slide, but basically what we did was kind of break out the topics of what these people were talking about into things that might be relevant. Now, Visa's going to stay away from political and regulatory issues if they're not related to your financial system, and other pieces that don't really belong to us. But this sharing expertise piece was something that really hit home to us and something that we decided to move a little bit further in. If you notice what they were talking about, these were really questions and advice that small business owners were giving each other. They were using these platforms as a sort of networking tool for themselves. How do I do this better? Let me tell you how I did it. And then we went a little bit further to actually understand, well, how are they sharing this content? A lot of the posts link to external sites, which is great information for us because it tells us who they're influenced by, what publications they read, what are the authors that they really trust and love. They were mentioning other users. So as I said, we could kind of build these networks of how information was being shared across these groups of people. And then most importantly for us, 30% of the content was people creating original posts. If you think about the 1-9-90 rule, actually creating original content takes a lot of work. And if the people are actually taking the time to create these original posts, you know they have something to say and they want to be heard. So what did that mean for Visa? We basically took a whole new approach to content for this group. Rather than Visa building content that tells you, hey, here's what we might want to share with you about being a small to medium business owner, we actually let them share it themselves. So we gave them video cameras. We took their photographs. We listened to their stories. We had our content creators go out to their businesses and have them tell their story. What is it that you would want another small business owner to know? Help other small business owners with what you feel are the most important things. Top 10 things to start a small business. What are the top 10 things you wish you knew? All of these things. And they loved it, right? It's free marketing for them, and it helps us to build relationships, and it really builds this network bigger and bigger without us having to do a whole lot. The results, these are a bit old. We have built this program out much farther than LinkedIn, but we started with LinkedIn because that felt most natural. We saw a consistent engagement rate of higher than LinkedIn benchmarks. We earned something like 100,000 new business owner followers on LinkedIn, really decreasing our need to spend to reach this audience. We had 50 times the number of shares per post, and most importantly, we had double the number of website visitors and 28,000 new subscribers to our small to medium business owner email list, really being able to reach them in our own spaces. And with the website, they were then actually downloading the content that we kind of started with all of this with. We also created a small to medium business meetup tour. We basically give business owners the platform and the drinks and the food and have them come to this place to speak to each other. We choose, someone who is widely followed among this panel that we've seen. We have them present some content, and then we really just give these owners, business owners, a place and a time to meet and greet with each other. I will quickly run through this affluent one. This one was even more complex than the small and medium business owners. We're basically trying to uncover unstated values and attitudes shaped by cultural context. I mean, this is traditionally a very complex, like focus group or in-home research project. But we believed that we could do it on social. So we, again, people don't really say I'm affluent in their keywords. So we actually searched job titles. We found on Glassdoor job titles that were likely to make over what we at Visa consider affluent or used to, $100,000. And then we just searched for those job titles, again, took all of these people, dumped them into a searchable database, and really got to the things that we were most interested in, which is why do they do the things that they do? And all of this was really helping us affluence one of our most important audiences. We really wanted to understand, are we reaching them with the correct sponsorships and the correct marketing strategy? So again, kind of an eye chart, but really what I wanted to show you here is that we're not just looking at like what do they mention with food and beverage. We want to know why organic mentions are increasing faster than sustainable. What is it about that term that means more to these people? Why do they are more likely to donate to Movember than the Red Cross? I mean, these are deep questions that can't be solved with some keyword searches. We also are able to look at the interests most unique to this group. Again, traditionally probably done with a survey, but we were able to group our cohort into what are the things that they respond to the most? What are the things that they like the most? I mean, some of these are no-brainers, tech media, liberal politics, but some of them were actually quite interesting and really helped us to understand our audience. This one was huge, and Seth talked about this, but we want to know who our audience is influenced by in these different buckets so that we can choose the right influencers. I mean, we pay a lot of money for these influencers. We don't want somebody who we think is going to be the most influential or who has the most followers, but who actually these people are talking about and linking to. It's a very important piece. We want to make sure that if we're going to spend money to have somebody work with us, that they actually are influential in this space and to these folks. Another just quick chart that you can do with this kind of data is Bank of America traditionally owns the marathon and triathlon space. We don't want to infringe on that space, but we do know that the affluent are very active. So what is something else that we might be able to put our name next to? Sponsorship that is growing in size with this audience. And we found that CrossFit and weekend warrior runs were kind of a space that's growing rapidly within this audience and something that we may want to look into as far as sponsoring those activities. I'll just quickly go through this. Again, we're not just talking about why people work out, but what are the unstated values? It's stress relief. It's making workouts fun. It's doing this as a group activity. And really, what this actually came out to, which is huge impact on Visa, is we found that our affluent, the way that we were defining affluent, it's no longer affluent in today's world. People who make $100,000 a year are more middle of the road, and they like to do middle of the road type things. They dine to save time, to celebrate, to spend time with family. They travel to unplug and learn. What we really had traditionally been defining as affluent, we now are ultra affluent, 250,000 and above, and these are the folks who really are out there to experience, to acquire things, to try the celebrity chef dish. And so we really needed to break these audiences apart and take a whole new approach to our segments and basically pull back on some of the more ultra-affluent activities for our middle of the road and really break apart these ultra-affluent activities into something new and exciting, something bigger than we had done before. But this really is a huge business objective for Visa, and we started with this social data. We actually did align this to a bigger market research project because this is a huge strategic change for Visa, and we needed to just double check, and everything that we found here we actually found in surveys and focus groups as well.
Cool.
Cool.
So yeah, we listed some advantages here, but I don't know if there's time for like one question or half a question.
We do have. That's one of the benefits of being the last.
Yay.
We do have time. So, fire away. Okay. Was this really so provocative? What do we think?
We'll say more provocative things at drinks if you find us there. For sure.
Yeah. Well, then in this. Oh, there you go. Sorry.
When you're doing this passive social listening, are the consumers that you're listening to aware of your presence or what you're capturing from them?
No, I mean, it's just like any social listening tool that you would use. People don't know that you've pulled in their data, and these people don't know, and we wouldn't want them to know. We don't want them to understand that we're listening to them. I mean, this is public data. It's out there in the world. You've put it there. We're just harvesting it in a new way and using it in a new research type way.
Yeah, I mean, we're generally, I mean, we are saving their handles, but we're not, if we are kind of merging this with customer data warehouses in some cases, I mean, it's all done behind firewalls. It's pretty, we're not really storing a lot of publicly available information when it's easily accessible, but it's only public data. I mean, it's nothing too.
And how are you actually doing this? Are you manually like observing, or is there some sort of crawler out there that you're using to automate this process?
We've built some stuff in-house. There's some other vendors that are out there that have developed stuff you can use, like People Pattern has developed some tools you can use. But I think Twitter and Instagram until last week, you could just go to their API and literally pull everything that everybody's following and every piece of content, as long as you had enough server space. And we're investing enough in it, you could do that. I mean, when we're creating the panel is the hardest part, because identifying people that make $250,000 a year reliably is tricky. So we would go to things like, I think Glassdoor, there was another site we went to. We scraped all those job titles. We basically found people that self-described having those job titles on Twitter in this case. We could do the same thing on Facebook. And then we basically used Amazon's Mechanical Turk that people actually match the LinkedIn profile with the person to ensure that they really were who they said they were. And we weren't including people that were saying things like, I'm the CEO of Dope Beats and stuff like that, which there's plenty of, online. But then the storage part, I mean, it's really just like you build a data ingestion tool using the APIs, and you kind of store it all in Elasticsearch or some similar kind of, technology where you're able to kind of query the content. We have something, again, that's pretty home-baked. I know Visa's kind of developed some tools that are.
You can actually, some social listening tools actually allow you to pull in specific handles.
Yeah. If there's only a few hundred or a couple thousand, that's easy. When you get into like the hundreds of thousands, it gets a little bit more complicated.
And we have one more question, right? There you go.
Right here. What was the incentive you used when you asked people to start to share or invited them to the events, that sort of thing?
We actually did not use an incentive. I mean, when you push out content on a Visa-owned channel, you are automatically getting millions and millions of impressions. Now, if you're a small to medium business owner, you would have to pay a lot of money to get that kind of reach. So for us, it's a great partnership because they're getting the reach of the Visa network, and we are getting the endorsement of this group that traditionally did not want a relationship with Visa. So it was a mutually beneficial, but they really see the value of this. I mean, we're not really giving them a ton of information that they didn't already know about the Visa network. What they're really getting is this network of other small to medium business owners to try to solve problems with.
Perfect. Please help me thank Jessica and Seth.
Thanks.